While not explicit, the content of today's podcast is for mature audiences. We advise listener discretion. Today's content will be for mature audiences. Just recently, a mum came to me after a parent night and, well, she was upset. In fact, she was furious. She and her husband were in the process of splitting. In fact, in the week just previous, he had been told to pack his things and moved out. She and their daughter had gone away for the weekend. Their daughter, around about 9 or 10 years of age. They came home after he'd moved out. The daughter turned on the computer, and this 9 or 10-year-old girl was confronted with a hardcore pornography site, breathtakingly explicit content, and she screamed. Your children are almost certain to see pornography. Today, how to talk to your children about explicit content on the internet. Hello, this is the Happy Families Podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson.
I really wish we didn't have to have this conversation.
Horrible story.
It is so important that we find a way to pre-arm our kids.
Yeah, and let's just talk about stats so that we can be clear about why it's so important. Parents often underestimate their children's exposure to pornography. I've just been writing about this in my book about boys. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from that book right now. I've written, the most active consumers of pornography worldwide are aged between 15 and 20 years. Pornography is typically, though not entirely, a boy thing. According to Dr. Marshall Ballantyne-Jones, an Australian researcher on the topic, boys typically encounter it around age 13, though many have their first exposure in primary school. And some experts suggest that the average age of first exposure is closer to 10 or 11. Girls generally encounter it later, around age 16. Kylie, here are a couple of other alarming stats. Number one, by the age of 15, 99% of boys are estimated to have seen pornography, explicit content. 50 to 70% of 15-year-old girls have. This is sobering. A 2017 Australian study revealed that among 15 to 29-year-olds, every male respondent, that's 100%, of 15 to 29-year-olds in this study reported exposure to pornography. More concerning, the consumption patterns. 39% viewed it daily. Another 46% viewed it weekly.
Wow.
Which means that 85% of young men in this age group are regular consumers of pornography, with only 15% abstaining from weekly use.
Wow.
So there's one more thing that I need to say about this, and I struggle to bring it up, but I was doing a parent night a few years ago, and we were going to be talking about this kind of content. A dad came up to me ahead of time. He knew what we had on the agenda, and he said, so this pornography conversation, I don't get the big deal. It's just boobs. And I responded by saying, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what internet pornography is out there, but the pornography that you're thinking of, the pornography perhaps from when you were a young man, it's changed. Here's a quote in my book from Louise Perry, the author of The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. She says pornography, quote, normalizes styles of sex which tend to be very aggressive and degrading, particularly towards women. But it's worse than that. This content is shaping sexual expectations and understandings at a critical formative age before they have any sense of what is pleasurable. I mean, you think about it, Kylie. If kids are exposed to this content somewhere between 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, usually they're not going to have their first kiss until they're, 15, 16, 17? Maybe 13 if they're early starters. But on average, Marshall Ballantyne-Jones, a researcher in this area, told me that most kids are seeing explicit content about 3 to 3.5 years before they have their first kiss. So it's shaping their beliefs well before they're engaged in the behaviours, which means that the way they'll behave is different.
Well, and the challenging thing is that both males and females are seeing this, and it literally is creating the foundations of what they think is a loving relationship, because we associate sex and sexual intimacy as part of a loving relationship.
Well, pornography changes that, and that's what we need to talk about. What does it actually do? We could talk a lot about the content. I don't think that's constructive for our discussion today. Instead, we want to share with you a handful of ways, a handful of things that you need to be aware of so that you can talk with your children, because chances are they're almost certain to see pornography.
I said at the beginning, the most important thing that we can do is pre-arm our kids.
Yeah.
Start having conversations. Have it literally, it's a natural part of the relationship you have with your child. They come home from school, they ask you a question because they've heard something in the playground being talked about that they don't know.
I still remember my one of my sisters came home from pony camp when my parents sent them off for that. And she walked into Mum, who was working with a customer at the time. Mum and Dad owned a furniture shop. So my mum's trying to sell like a sofa or a dining suite to a customer. And my little sister asks her to explain to her what a certain sex act is. Now, my sister may not have even known that it was a sex act, but in front of this stranger, my sister has said, "Hey, Mum, what's a..." And then she's shared the sex act, and Mum has obviously gone bright red and said, "I'll talk to you about this later," and then looked at the guy that's trying to buy the furniture and said, "I'm so sorry about that. She's just come home from pony camp. I wonder what they've been doing at night when they've been supposed to be sleeping." So the way that I say it is this: talk early, talk often. I think that we want to have every difficult conversation you can imagine with your children before they're 2. And it's not because the children will understand it, they won't. It's so that you can become comfortable with talking about difficult things with your children from an early age. And like you said, Kylie, when they walk in the door and they've got a tough question, embrace it.
Yeah, don't shy away from it. How amazing that your kid wants to come home and talk to you, the person they trust the most, about difficult things. Don't shy away from it. Have those conversations. Sit down with them. Talk about it. Yeah, they might be a little bit uncomfortable, but if you can normalize that, then they'll come to you and talk to you about anything.
Not talking about it isn't protective. No. I know that that's a double negative, but you get where I'm going with that. Not talking about it isn't protective. You need to talk about it because that's where the protection comes.
We want to bubble wrap them up, right? We don't want them to know that this stuff exists. But the reality is...
It does.
Number one, it does. But number two, they're having conversations. They're part of conversations that are happening in the playground on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, would you rather their peers be the ones that are instructing them, or Google, or the internet, or that pornographic website? Would you rather that be their educator, or would you prefer to be the educator yourself? I think that the answer has to be us.
And I guess the only caveat warning that I would give is you don't have to give them everything.
Oh, yeah.
If they come home and ask you where babies come from, you might have a conversation about the female body. You might not have to go
all the way. Yeah.
Because they're only 5 or 6.
Yeah. Don't turn on the fire hose because they're thirsty. Just give them a cup of water.
Just give and ask them, do they have any other questions once you finish? That will tell you where they're at, and you can answer their questions without bombarding them with information that they're not ready for.
Okay, Kylie, the second way that we can help our children to have healthy and useful conversations with us about explicit content is once the kids are old enough to be online, and that might be 4 or it might be 7, it depends on every family and how they're doing this, we need to consistently, early and often, remind them that the internet is not always safe for children. And by virtue of that, if they see anything that's scary or makes them uncomfortable, that they really do need to talk to us. They're not going to get in trouble, but we need to know because sometimes the internet is not safe. Third, let's just admit, when you're young, you're interested in this stuff. Our children shouldn't be punished for being curious. Our children shouldn't lose privileges for seeing something explicit, especially if it's unintentional, but even maybe if it is intentional the first time, because it's normal that kids are going to be curious about this. We want to normalize curiosity while still not endorsing or encouraging the behavior. The best way to do this, I think, is to say to the kids, of course this is interesting, but how does it really make you feel? Because if the kids are really in tune, not only will they be interested, but like this mum's daughter who was exposed to something unintentionally, she also cried out because it was icky and it affected her. She felt like it was gross and there was something not right about it. So we want to be able to normalize the curiosity, but also reflect on the ickiness and talk about why that is, the natural desire that we have for intimacy with another person. Like that's exciting, right? That's interesting.
So I guess a beautiful flow on from that is the acknowledgement that when our kids come and tell us that they've seen something, discuss what they've seen. And in the context of a healthy relationship, what that means.
Yeah.
What that looks like.
A child, when you say, what did you see, is unlikely to say, well, let me tell you all about it. Like, they're going to be reticent. But asking the question and gently prodding for more information is going to help you to say, okay, well, what does that mean? And how did it make you feel? And do you think that that's the kind of thing that people in loving, healthy relationships do? What messages is this sending to you about gender or about power or about what men want or about what women want or about what consent is? I mean, you can turn this into a really, really fascinating discussion. And depending on the age of your child, you may continue the discussion into ideas around what intimacy really should be like. You can talk about mutual pleasure. You can talk about things that women really, really do want versus things that they don't, and how pornography typically depicts things, as Louise Perry said, that women are not, on the whole, excited about.
And I think the last thing that's so important is helping our kids to set boundaries to keep them safe, whether it be physical boundaries of what they will and won't accept in the way people interact with them on an intimate level.
Yeah.
Depending on age, obviously, it's going to vary and change, but also the boundaries around internet use and how to safeguard themselves so that they don't come across this content on a regular basis.
So again, a quick content warning. I'm not going to go deep here, but in my book, I've written about what it does to our sons, and this is why the boundaries need to exist. And I think this is something to talk to your children about, sons and daughters. I talked with Peggy Orenstein. She's the author of Boys and Sex, best-selling author, and she put it really bluntly. She said this. She said, if you as a parent are imagining 70s porn or 80s porn or even 90s porn, you're not getting what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Her research revealed that boys routinely acknowledge viewing extreme content like rape, gangbangs, and violence. But then she went on to say this: pornography rewires sexual behavior in ways that should alarm every parent. Boys who view pornography become less likely to use condoms, more likely to share explicit images without consent, more likely to engage in risky behavior, more likely to engage in delinquent behavior and substance use, more likely to pursue casual hookups and one-night stands, more likely to express intentions to pursue higher numbers of sexual partners. Another study showed that females reported negative consequences from viewing explicit content, including lowered body image, experiencing a partner critical of their body, increased pressure to perform acts seen in pornographic films, and less actual sex, while males reported being more critical of their partner's body and also became less interested in actual sex. Last thing, the pornography script changes beliefs about what's quote-unquote normal, and that shifts behavior. Anal sex and choking are the two most obvious examples. These sex practices are no longer fringe. According to Marie Crabb's research, they're squarely in the mainstream. I want to re-emphasize the percentage of boys watching this is not trivial, and it's not just
literally,
boobs.
you said 100% between 15 to 29-year-olds.
Yeah, in that one study. Yeah.
And then 39% of them acknowledge daily viewing.
And the people who watch it the most, especially the violent kinds of explicit content, are much more likely to endorse what's known as the rape myth. Okay, so this is becoming desensitized to sexual violence and blaming victims for their own assaults. The rape myth is basically, you must have been asking for it.
Yeah.
It's a sickening cycle. It needs to be broken. We hope that the things we've shared with you today, as hard as they are to hear, will help you to recognize the importance of having the conversation with your kids, and hopefully we've given you some useful tips to have useful discussions with them. It matters so much. There are more resources about this at Marie Crabb's website, It's Time We Talked. You can also check out the eSafety Commissioner's website, esafety.gov.au. In fact, if you just Google how to talk about pornography with my kids, you'll find resources galore to help you. Fight the New Drug is another great place to go. Melinda Tankard-Reist's work at Collective Shout is also helpful. We'll link to all of them in the show notes. Really, really hope that this has been helpful. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. For more information and resources about keeping your kids safe and helping your family to be happy, visit happyfamilies.com.au.